Excellent speech.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to confirm that the Labor Party will be, with some reluctance, supporting this bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill does extend the transitional period established under the Insurance Prudential Supervision Act 2010 that would otherwise expire in September of this year, and the bill does need to be enacted before this date. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't hope to match the comprehensive and exciting presentation by the Minister in the chair. And there will be a quiz at the end of this debate for people watching Parliament tonight to test their memory of the points that the Minister made in her opening address. My remarks will be limited to two broad sections. Firstly, I'm going to note some of the provisions of the bill which have no doubt been made with considerable input from the insurance industry. I think it's important that the House checks off that input. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, if you will allow me, note some contextual matters to do with Reserve Bank Prudential Supervision, which provide some of the framework within which this bill has occurred. Mr. Speaker, on to the first matter, which is that this bill might have been named the Insurance Prudential Supervision, the Industry Made Me Do It Amendment Bill. And the reason for that characterisation, sir, is that it contains a number of provisions which might be kindly described as business-friendly. In other words, judging by the Minister's enthusiasm for her speech, she was probably handed a list by the Insurance Association and told, please enact these. And that seems to be what's happening, Mr. Speaker, and I draw the House's attention to but a couple of examples. The first is, in the genteel language of officials, the bill contains amendments that extend the term of provisional licences of insurers that enter into an insolvency procedure before 7 September. Extending the term of these licences ensures that the distress management tools are available, will reduce unnecessary costs and improve administrative efficiency. In other words, it's a free extension, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, here's another example. Other amendments will reduce costs and improve administrative efficiency. Same language again. For example, a formalised register administered by the bank and an ability to exempt insurers in the run-off from the requirement to maintain a current financial strength rating. Why have a current financial strength rating if you're simply going to exempt the insurers? This is rather interesting, Mr. Speaker, the Industry Made Me Do It bill. I won't go on because, of course, there are valid reasons to have the bill. We don't want the current transitional period expiring and the industry simply being left in the lurch, and for that reason Labor is supporting it. Mr. Speaker, it's very important now, if I might, to note some of the context within which this has occurred. This has been, sir, a very, very big week for the Reserve Bank. Mr. Speaker, it was only yesterday that we discovered that despite the continual protestations of the Minister of Finance that New Zealand had hitherto had the very best monetary policy in the entire world, which included no intervention in currency markets and no macro-prudential tools, guess what? The Governor of the Reserve Bank confirmed to the Finance and Expenditure Committee yesterday that virtually as the Minister was speaking, the bank was busy intervening in the New Zealand dollar. Goodness me! What the Minister refused to countenance, the Governor was already doing. How very, very interesting. So there's the Reserve Bank selling New Zealand dollars like it's going out of fashion to drive the Kiwi down, and in fact it did, because as soon as that was announced, the Kiwi dollar dropped like a stone, about a cent. But the interesting thing here is that Labor's been calling for exactly that kind of intervention, so have our Green colleagues, for about the last 3 years, and the government of the day has said it was unnecessary. And here's the embarrassing thing for the National Act government. The Governor of the Reserve Bank, hardly a noted Marxist revolutionary, has gone on and done it behind their backs, leapfrogged the government and agreed with the opposition. What an interesting week for the Reserve Bank to be debating the rather now exciting Insurance Prudential Supervision Amendment Bill. Who knew that this bill would be a showstopper? Who knew why the government buried it at the very end of the long list of matters to be covered through an urgency? Because they're embarrassed, sir. Deeply, deeply embarrassed. They are so worried, sir, that Tim Grosser has been brought back from Geneva or Ouagadougou, where he was busy marshalling votes to be the Secretary-General of the South Pacific Forum, just so he could save the government for this bill. And I commend his action, and I hope someone gave him a decent visa. And I look forward to running against him in the good seat of New Lynn in a mere 18 months' time. Mr. Speaker, the second signal achievement of this week in regard to the Reserve Bank, sir, is the Governor's admission that in a few days he will be signing with the Minister of Finance a memorandum of understanding on the subject of macro-prudential supervision, a matter not unrelated to the content of this bill, but rather more exciting, sir. That is things like loan-to-value ratios and other tools which will compress the rapid rise of the housing market. Again, sir, the Labour and Green parties have been calling for the increased use of these tools and the consequential amendment of the Reserve Bank Act for the last 2 years. We're on record. What did Mr. English say? Oh no, he said. There is no need. We already have the best monetary policy in the whole wide world, and that would be unorthodox. Well, how very interesting, sir, that in a short few days' time he will be signing off on the very same amendments which the opposition has long mooted and which he has long denied. What a very interesting week for the Reserve Bank, sir. And the third leg of the treble for the Reserve Bank is the contribution of noted Herald economist Brian Fallow, who today has declared that austerity, sir, is for booms, not slumps. This is important, sir, because the government is embarking on a veritable austerity program, soon to be confirmed by another miserly and unfair budget in just a few days' time. That's right. Does the government believe that we are in a boom? If they do, they must be living on a different planet. Should we call it Planet Gilmore? Planet Gilmore, sir. On Planet Gilmore, everything is rosy, the waiters deliver on time, they don't answer back. On Planet Gilmore, sir, New Zealand is blooming. It's just that on the real planet Earth, in the real Aotearoa, it ain't booming. There's 270,000, here's a serious bit, children growing up in poverty, and many, many tens of thousands more unemployed than when this government took office. This is something closer to a slump for real New Zealanders than a boom, and this is no time for austerity. Mr. Speaker, summing up, Todd, there is time for the noted chairman of the Finance and Expenditure Committee to refresh the coiffure of his pate before he leaps to his feet and demands the attention of the viewer. Mr. Speaker, may I sum up? There are three elements to this debate. The first is, as the Minister, with such sparkling repartee, has outlined to the House, this is a boring bill. However, it is boring particularly because she is merely reading the shopping list from the Insurance Industry Association. She's so afraid she is now slumping down behind her chair. She's so ashamed to have been the tool of the industry. Mr. Speaker, the second main point, sir, is that there are some significant holes which Labor will do its best to reconsider in 18 months' time when we take the Treasury benches. And the third, sir, is that it's been a huge week for the Reserve Bank. They've finally come out. It's appropriate to use such terms in this House, of course, noting recent achievements. They've come out, sir, and said that they like to intervene in currency markets. It's good for them, it puts hairs on their chest, they make money out of it, and it drives down the Kiwi dollar so we can export more. That's all good stuff. The only person who disagrees is Bill English, but Graham Wheeler's seen to him. And Mr. Speaker, finally, he's seeing to him next week when he forces the Minister to sign off on the macro-prudential toolbox, which Labor and the Greens have long been calling for. I would say this is a week in regard of the Reserve Bank's supervision role where you could say opposition 1, government 0, people of New Zealand live in hope. Thank you.
I call Todd McLeay.
Mr. Speaker, there are people